Have you ever discovered that the person who saved your life was actually someone who could kill you? Marcus was freezing to death on the roadside when that car stopped, but when he heard the sound of handcuffs, everything changed. The December wind cut through Marcus's jacket like ice, and his breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. He'd been walking along Highway 95 in Nevada for 6 hours since his ride had dropped him off at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. The temperature had plummeted after sunset, and now it was hovering somewhere around 15 degrees. His phone had died 3 hours ago. His last $5 had gone to a cup of coffee that was now just a memory, and the next town was still 20 miles away through empty desert. But Marcus had no idea that freezing to death was about to become the least of his problems. He could barely feel his fingers anymore, and his legs were starting to cramp from the cold. Every car that passed sent a wave of warm air that teased him with the promise of salvation, but none of them stopped. Marcus had been hitchhiking for years, but he'd never been this cold, this desperate, this close to what might be his final mistake. That's when he saw the headlights approaching from behind. The car was slowing down. Marcus felt a surge of relief so intense it almost brought tears to his eyes. He jogged toward the vehicle as best he could on numb legs, his backpack bouncing against his spine. It was a dark sedan with tinted windows, clean and well-maintained. As Marcus approached, the driver's side window rolled down to reveal a man in his 40s with short cropped hair and a concerned expression. "Jesus, son, you look half frozen," the man said, his voice carrying genuine worry. "Get in here before you turn into a popsicle." Marcus didn't need to be asked twice. He pulled open the passenger door and practically fell into the seat, immediately grateful for the warmth pouring out of the heating vents. "Thank you," Marcus gasped, rubbing his hands together. "I thought I was going to die out there." The man pulled back onto the highway, shaking his head. "What the hell were you doing walking in this weather? It's gotta be below freezing. My ride dropped me off hours ago. Phone died, no money for a motel. I was trying to make it to the next town." "Well, you're lucky I came along when I did," the driver said. "I'm heading to Reno. That work for you?" Marcus nodded eagerly. Reno was perfect, a real city with bus stations and shelters and warm places to spend the night. "Name's Detective Ray Morrison," the man said, extending his hand. "State Police." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and calloused palm. "Marcus Chen, and thank you again, Detective. You probably saved my life." As they drove through the night, Detective Morrison seemed genuinely interested in Marcus's story. He asked about his travels, his family, his plans. It was the kind of conversation that made hitchhiking worthwhile, connecting with a stranger, finding unexpected kindness on the road. But there were small details that didn't quite add up. Detective Morrison claimed to be heading home after a long shift, but his car was too clean, too orangey for someone who'd been working all day. There was no coffee cup, no fast food wrappers, no sign of the casual mess that accumulates during a busy day, and his questions seemed oddly specific. Did Marcus have family expecting him? Did anyone know his exact travel route? How often did he check in with people back home? Marcus tried to push down the growing unease. He was warm, safe, and heading toward help. Detective Morrison had saved his life. There was no reason to be suspicious of a police officer who'd shown him such kindness. Most of the time that would have been true. They'd been driving for about an hour when Detective Morrison pulled off at an exit Marcus didn't recognize. Sign was too dark to read clearly, but it didn't look like the Reno exit. "Just need to make a quick stop," Morrison explained before Marcus could ask. "Won't take long." The exit led to a narrow road that wound through scrub brush and rocky outcroppings. There were no street lights, no other cars, no signs of civilization at all. Marcus felt his earlier unease start to transform into genuine worry. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "Just a place I need to check on," Morrison replied, but something in his tone had changed. It was colder now, more distant. That's when Marcus heard it, a metallic clinking sound from somewhere near the driver's seat. In the dim light from the dashboard, Marcus could see what had made the noise. Hanging from Morrison's belt, partially concealed by his jacket, were a pair of handcuffs, but not the standard police-issue handcuffs Marcus had seen before. These were different, heavier, with what looked like extra restraint points. And there was something else that made Marcus's blood run cold. The handcuffs were stained dark with what looked suspiciously like dried blood. Morrison noticed Marcus looking and smiled, but it wasn't the same warm smile he'd worn when he picked Marcus up from the roadside. This smile was cold, predatory, completely different from the concerned police officer who had seemed like salvation an hour earlier. "Problem, Marcus?" "No problem," Marcus said carefully, his mind racing through possibilities. "Just wondering where we're headed." Morrison turned the car onto an even smaller dirt road, and the headlights illuminated a small, isolated building ahead. It looked like some kind of maintenance shed or storage facility, with no windows and a single metal door. "Here's the thing, Marcus," Morrison said, pulling the car to a stop about 50 yards from the building. "I'm not actually Detective Morrison, and I'm not taking you to Reno." Marcus felt the world tilt around him. The warm car that had seemed like salvation suddenly felt like a trap. "I don't understand," Marcus said, though he was starting to understand all too well. Morrison reached into his jacket and pulled out what looked like a police badge. But when he held it up to the dashboard light, Marcus could see it was a fake, a cheap replica that wouldn't fool anyone in good lighting. "The real Detective Morrison has been dead for about 6 months, the man said conversationally. "I've been using his identity ever since. Amazing how much trust people put in a police badge, even a fake one." But Marcus had noticed something the fake detective didn't realize he'd seen. When Morrison had reached for the badge, his jacket had fallen open to reveal a gun in a shoulder holster. But more importantly, Marcus had glimpsed something else, a small notebook with what looked like names and dates written in it. And at the top of the visible page, Marcus could make out the words Subject 23 in today's date. Subject 23, which meant there had been at least 22 others. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Morrison smiled again, and this time there was nothing human in the expression. "Let's just say I collect people like you. Young travelers, loners, people whose disappearance won't be noticed right away. The isolated roads of Nevada are perfect for my work." He gestured toward the building with the gun that was now in his hand. "That's my workshop. It's soundproof, well supplied, and very private. You and I are going to spend some quality time together, Marcus. Days, maybe weeks. Depends on how long you last." But Marcus had learned something important during his years of hitchhiking. Sometimes the only way to survive is to act when everyone expects you to freeze. Instead of sitting there paralyzed by fear, Marcus suddenly threw himself sideways against the passenger door, fumbling for the handle. The door flew open and he rolled out into the cold desert night, hitting the ground hard and scrambling to his feet. Behind him, he heard Morrison cursing and the car door slamming. A powerful flashlight beam began sweeping through the darkness, hunting for him. Marcus ran toward the rocky outcroppings he'd seen in the car's headlights, using every bit of energy his cold, stiffened muscles could muster. The fake detective was shouting behind him, but Marcus didn't stop to listen to the words. He dove behind a large boulder just as the first gunshot rang out. The bullet sparked off the rock inches from his head, and Marcus realized that Morrison wasn't trying to wound him, he was shooting to kill. But Marcus had one advantage Morrison didn't know about. During his years of hitchhiking, Marcus had developed an almost supernatural sense of direction and an ability to navigate in the dark. Even in unfamiliar terrain, He could usually find his way back to main roads by following the subtle clues of distant lights and sound patterns. Marcus began moving from rock to rock, staying low and quiet, trying to put distance between himself and Morrison while working his way back toward what he hoped was the highway. Behind him, he could hear the fake detective crashing through the brush, cursing and firing occasional shots into the darkness. The temperature was brutal, probably close to zero now, but Marcus forced himself to keep moving. Freezing to death was still better than whatever Morrison had planned for him in that soundproof building. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Marcus saw the most beautiful sight of his life, the distant glow of headlights on a highway. He was about half a mile away, but he could make it. That's when he heard the sound that made his heart skip, the car engine starting up behind him. Morrison had given up the chase on foot and gone back for his vehicle. Now Marcus could see Headley sweeping back and forth across the desert, searching for him. Marcus sprinted toward the highway, no longer caring about stealth or conservation of energy. It was a race now, and the loser would end up as Subject 24 in Morrison's notebook. He reached the highway just as Morrison's car came roaring over a ridge behind him. Marcus threw himself into the middle of the road, waving his arms frantically at an approaching truck. The big rig's air brakes hissed as it ground to a stop, and Marcus could see the concerned face of the driver through the windshield. "Help me," Marcus shouted, running to the driver's side. "There's a man with a gun trying to kill me." The trucker, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, took one look at Marcus's condition and immediately reached for her radio. "This is Big Betty to any units on Highway 95. I've got an emergency situation at mile marker 12. Man here says someone's trying to kill him, and I can see a vehicle approaching fast with no lights." Morrison's car had reached the highway, but instead of stopping, it accelerated past them into the night. The fake detective had decided that discretion was the better part of valor. "Nevada State Patrol, Big Betty, we're dispatching units to your location now. Keep the victim with you and stay on the highway." 20 minutes later, Marcus was sitting in the back of a real police cruiser, wrapped in blankets and giving his statement to two genuine state troopers. But the investigation that followed would reveal something far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The real Detective Ray Morrison was found buried on his property in Carson City, Sergeant Linda Hayes told Marcus 3 days later. He'd been missing for 8 months, not 6 like your attacker claimed. Marcus was recovering in a Reno hospital, being treated for hypothermia and exhaustion. The fake Morrison had disappeared completely, leaving behind only the isolated building that had turned out to be exactly what he'd promised: a soundproof workshop equipped with restraints, torture devices, and evidence of multiple victims. How many others, Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Sergeant Hayes looked grim. "We found remains and personal effects suggesting at least 18 previous victims. All young men, all travelers, all people whose disappearances weren't immediately investigated." The scope of what Marcus had escaped finally hit him. Not just death, but weeks of torture in that desert workshop, becoming another nameless victim of a serial killer who used the trust people placed in police officers to lure them to their deaths. "But here's the thing that really disturbs us," Sergeant Hayes continued. "We think Morrison, the fake one, has been doing this for years, possibly in multiple states, using the identities of dead police officers, picking up stranded travelers, taking them to isolated locations." She showed Marcus a map covered in red pins. Missing persons reports that fit the pattern spread across Nevada, California, and Arizona. Young men traveling alone, last seen accepting rides from helpful strangers. "We think your escape might have broken open a case that's been going cold for half a decade." But the investigation revealed one more chilling detail. "Marcus, when we searched that building, we found something else. A journal with detailed entries about each victim. The fake Morrison kept meticulous records, how he selected his targets, how he approached them, how long he kept them alive. Sergeant Hayes paused, clearly struggling with what she had to say next. Your entry was different from the others. He'd been watching you for weeks, following your travel pattern, waiting for the right opportunity. The broken-down car, the cold weather, the isolated location. None of it was coincidence. He engineered the entire situation to make you desperate enough to accept help from anyone. The revelation was both terrifying and strangely validating. Marcus's instincts had been right. Something had felt wrong about Morrison from the beginning, but those same instincts had also saved his life. The manhunt for the fake Morrison became one of the largest serial killer investigations in Nevada history. FBI behavioral analysts used Marcus's detailed description of the killer's methods to create a profile. The evidence found in the desert workshop provided insights into his psychology and operating procedures. Most importantly, Marcus's survival had exposed a predator who had been operating undetected for years. But Morrison was experienced at staying hidden, and months passed without any confirmed sightings. Then, 8 months after Marcus's escape, Sergeant Hayes called with news that would close the case forever. We got him, she said simply. Morrison had been arrested during a routine traffic stop in Arizona. The officer who pulled him over had noticed something suspicious about his behavior and decided to run his plates. When the car came back as stolen, a search revealed fake police credentials, weapons, and a notebook with details about potential new victims. His real name is William Crenshaw, Sergeant Hayes explained to Marcus over the phone. Career criminal with a history of impersonating authority figures. He's been doing this for at least 7 years, operating across multiple states. But the most disturbing revelation came during Crenshaw's interrogation. He told us that you were supposed to be his masterpiece. He'd been planning your abduction for months, studying your travel patterns, waiting for the perfect opportunity to approach you as a rescuer rather than a predator. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the memory of that cold Nevada night. He said most of his victims trusted him immediately because of the police persona, but he wanted to see if he could make someone trust him who was naturally suspicious. You were a challenge to him, Marcus, and your escape completely unraveled his sense of control. The trial that followed dominated headlines across the Southwest. William Crenshaw was ultimately convicted of 18 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. The evidence found in his desert workshop, combined with Marcus's testimony, painted a picture of one of the most methodical and cold-blooded serial killers in recent memory. But for Marcus, the most important moment came during his victim impact statement. 18 young men trusted someone they thought was there to help them, he told the court. They got into a car with someone who seemed safe, someone who wore the badge of authority and protection. William Crenshaw stole their trust, their lives, and their futures. Marcus looked directly at Crenshaw, who sat impassively at the defendant's table. But he also taught me something important about survival. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most helpful. Sometimes a badge is just a costume, and sometimes the person offering to save you is the one you need to run from. The courtroom was silent as Marcus finished his statement. I survived because I trusted my instincts even when logic told me I was being paranoid. Every person who hears this story and remembers to question helpful strangers, every traveler who asks to see real identification before getting in a car, every young person who chooses caution over convenience, that's William Crenshaw's real legacy. Today, 12 years after that freezing night on Highway 95, Marcus continues his advocacy work with safe face. But perhaps the most important lesson Marcus learned was about the complexity of trust and survival. That night taught me that kindness and evil can look exactly the same. On the surface, Marcus reflects now. A genuine police officer and a serial killer can both offer you a warm car and a ride to safety. The difference isn't in what they offer, It's in the details that your instincts pick up on. Marcus developed new safety protocols based on his experience. Always ask to see identification. Always tell someone your planned route and check-in times. Always trust your gut feelings about people who seem too helpful or ask too many personal questions. William Crenshaw was counting on my desperation to override my caution. He created a situation where I was so grateful for rescue that I wouldn't question my rescuer. That's exactly how predators operate. They manufacture the crisis and then present themselves as the solution. But Crenshaw also taught Marcus something positive about human nature. For every William Crenshaw out there, there are thousands of genuine helpers, real police officers who stop to assist stranded motorists, truckers who call in emergencies, ordinary citizens who go out of their way to help strangers in need. The key is learning to tell the difference. The investigation into Crenshaw's crimes led to policy changes in several states regarding police identification requirements and procedures for assisting stranded motorists. It also contributed to the development of better verification systems for travelers to confirm the identity of people claiming to be law enforcement officers. Marcus's nonprofit, Safe Passage, now includes specific training modules about recognizing fake authority figures and the tactics predators use to gain trust. The organization has helped prevent dozens of dangerous situations by teaching travelers to balance openness with appropriate caution. I still hitchhike, Marcus says now, but I do it smarter. I trust my instincts, I verify identities, and I never let gratitude override good judgment. The road is still full of genuinely good people willing to help strangers. You just have to know how to recognize the difference between a helper and a predator. The fake detective, who had seemed like salvation on that cold Nevada night, had turned out to be the devil in disguise. But Marcus had learned that sometimes the most important skill for survival is knowing when not to be saved by the wrong person. And sometimes the coldest night of your life becomes the moment you learn the most about staying warm in a dangerous world. The highway that had nearly claimed his life through cold had instead taught him lessons about heat. The heat of genuine human kindness and the cold fire of predators who wear masks of compassion while hunting for their next victim. Marcus had chosen to trust his instincts over his desperation, and that choice had saved not only his own life, but potentially dozens of others who might have become subjects 24. Sometimes the person who offers to rescue you is the one you most need to escape from. And sometimes saving yourself is the first step toward saving everyone else.